It's always a sad situation when people refuse, when they refuse to hear the voice of God and obey and do accordingly. Anyway, we've got to move on. So he says, now I write to you not to associate with anyone who bears the name of Christian, with anyone who bears the name of a brother, if he's known to be guilty of immorality, if he's known to be guilty of idolatry, if he's known to be guilty of greed, if he's known to be guilty of these things, he says, I'm telling you, don't associate with these people. He has a reason for saying that and for doing that. There's a reason that Jesus said to excommunicate people. Now, Jesus didn't use the word excommunicate, but that, he might as well. That's what he was saying. And there's a reason for those things. And they're to be used as measures of grace, actually. It's not retaliation. It's not to get back at someone or to revenge or anything like that. It's to be used as a measure of grace. And so Paul says, in other words, their soul, they have devoted themselves to anything, any object that will usurp the place of God. Idolaters. He said, don't associate with them. I was talking with, again, with Mike Gant, we were talking in conversation. I said, preached this a number of times before, and in the conversation, Mike said, he said, you know what the major problem in America is, don't you? He said, you know what the major problem in this country is, don't you? I didn't know exactly what he was going to say, so I just let him, I kind of looked like, well, you going to tell me? He says, idolatry. And he's right. And I preached that before, and I've ministered and talked about that before. In this nation, our number one problem is idolatry. If we get the idolatry problem straightened out, a lot of other problems would kind of take their own course and get straightened up. But he talks about people who just are just in the church, they profess Christianity, living like the world. People with a foul tongue and railing, abusing, reviling, slandering, a drunkard or a swindler. All those things he's addressing. He says, you don't even sit down and break bread with that type of person. Don't sit down. And one reason I think that Paul says, I know I'm doing a little more teaching now. We are preaching. We're going to have to flow with this. But one reason I believe that Paul said is because on another level, if you associate with that person who's known to be that type of hypocrite, it could very well affect your integrity. People look at you associating with that person, they know what kind of person they is, they say, they must be birds of a feather flock together. So you have to use great wisdom sometimes. Now again, that's not to shun everyone who's living that way, but he's dealing with church members who are professing one thing and doing something else and living another way. Because he goes on to say this, what about to do with judging those also who are outside? In other words, what business is it of mine? The Apostle Paul is saying, what business is it of mine? What right do I have to judge the outsiders? Those who are outside the church. Those who are lost, they know they're lost and that's the way they live. What right is it of mine to judge them? He says, it's the people on the inside of the church. It's not those outside, it's people on the inside, that need to be disciplined, that need to have some sort of judgment placed on them. Because he says in verse 13, those who are outside, God judges. Those in the world, so many times, have you ever noticed this? Many times when people jump up and say, well, you can't judge me. You got no right to judge me. You know most of the time that's church people saying that. You ever notice that? Very rarely do you hear, maybe sometime, but very rarely I have anybody from the world accuse me of judging them of anything. Excuse me, but it's always the people who are members of or associated with, affiliated with the church that are the first ones to get defensive and say, you can't judge me. Well, that's not what the Word says. The Word says, we read another place some time ago, where Paul says, you know what? You're supposed to judge spirits. You're to judge angels. You're to have some sort of discernment. Brother McGee said yesterday, one of the biggest problems in the church world this day and time we're in is discernment. The gift of discernment, he says, is a gift that is sorely lacking in our church today. The gift of discernment. And he's right. And I've said that multiple times as well. I think these guys must be hearing me preaching, repeating what I'm saying. I doubt that very seriously. But anyway, we are on the same page, on the same wavelength. So he says, God alone sits in judgment of those who are outside. In other words, the world, the only business I have with the world is try to win them to Jesus. That's my business with the world. That's my responsibility with the world. Yeah, I can't go out here and judge a drunkard who's in the world, who doesn't profess to be a Christian or anything else, and he lives that way. I can't go out here and judge him and rail on him for that. I just go and give him Jesus. Look, you need deliverance. I got you deliverance. I can tell you who can deliver you. Hallelujah. And so Paul had things to deal with in the Corinthian church. And I wanted to kind of lay that out to kind of give us a little bit better understanding of why he's starting off 1 Corinthians in chapter 1 as he is. So he had heard that the church, he dealt with the sin of the church. He heard the church was divided. He'll cover some of that in chapter 1. He heard that they were having problems and divisions, and then a delegation from the church arrived at Ephesus with a letter. They asked Paul to help in regarding these specific questions. And so 1 Corinthians was his response to that request. Paul, in the book of 1 Corinthians, just a very brief synopsis, and we'll try to get down to a little more meat in just what time we have. Paul dealt with sin in the church, primarily and initially in the first 6 chapters of Corinthians. He dealt harshly with sin in the church. Then he answered the questions that they asked over in chapter 7 through chapter 16. There were questions. And if you'll notice when you read through those chapters, you'll see this phrase a lot. Now concerning, Paul would say. Now concerning this. Now concerning that. Now concerning. And what he was doing, he was addressing the questions that they had given him, they had asked him. He was addressing those questions concerning these things. He discussed marriage in chapter 7. He discussed idolatry in chapter 8, 9, and 10. He covered idolatry. So idolatry must have been a pretty important deal back in Paul's day, of course, and I think it's a big deal in our day as well. He covers public worship in chapter 11. He covers spiritual gifts in chapters 12, 13, and 14. He covers spiritual gifts